life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Bern Moses. Welcome to another in our series of ongoing verbal essays brought to you in this television format. It's truly a pleasure to have you with us today. Bern, last week we were talking about a purpose, writing a purpose statement. We invited our viewers to call in or to write to us and give us an idea of the purpose statements they're developing or have developed. And maybe we'll be able to read some of those later on this month. Also, we talked a little bit about the difference between a purpose statement and a mission statement, and the difference between goals and pursuits. And you started to outline for us what a pursuit or pursuits are and how those differ from goals. And I was hoping we could spend a little more time today further defining the difference between those two topics and how we can use them in our lives to be more powerful.
You know, I've lived and worked now for half a century in an arena where there's a lot of goal talk. Got to have goals.
Yeah.
And I don't think a day passes when I don't hear someone say that or I read it in a book or whatever. There is an emerging awareness. I'm so gratified. You know what a zeitgeist is? It's like a bubbling up of an intellectual concept or an awareness at 2 or 3 different places on the planet at the same time. It's kind of like when the telephone was developed. I mean, it was right on the verge of being announced in Europe, you know, when Graham Bell announced it here. I've noticed in the past, 5 or 6 years, an occasional voice that emerges out there that's kind of in concert with what I've been teaching for 15 to 20 years because of some interesting experiences. Let's talk about goals for a second. And by the way, if you have someone in your family that's not good at that, why have them rush in and watch this and take some notes. In 1955, I got started in sales, and boy, I realized I had a problem. This was Saturday was my first day. Monday, I went to the library. I mean, I figured I got to do some study here, and I looked through the files and at the library, and I found this book says How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. Seemed like a good book to me because I hadn't failed yet. Maybe I could short-circuit this process. It was written by Frank Bettger, B-E-T-T-G-E-R, a delightful book, and I was inspired and stimulated by it. But one of the chapters in there he talked about as a young salesperson, his sales manager came to him one day, visited at his home, and while he was sitting there with he and his young sweetheart, his bride, he said, by the way, while I'm here, I'd like to see your goal list. You know, and he said, I didn't have a goal list. And the manager said, oh my, no goal, no game. You know, how can you accomplish anything if you don't know what you're going after? You know, just stories. And so he handed them each a piece of paper and had them write their goals down. And he said that was the beginning of a new concept for me. You know, somehow that satisfied him, okay? And he had maintained goal lists and moved towards them all of his life, and that's wonderful. Well, I thought, gee, that's a good idea. It wasn't long before I became a sales manager, and I had occasion to visit peers that, you know, working with me. And I'd find an occasion to drop by their house and sit down with the bride, and, you know, or the spouse. And I would say, oh, by the way, while I'm here, you know, I got to do this thing. I'd like to see your goal list. And they said, well, we don't have a goal list. A lot of them would say, oh, we got goals, but they're in our head. And I would sell them on the idea of putting them on a piece of paper. So I'd give them each a sheet of paper, just like he said that they'd done for him. And I'd say, make a list of 10 things that you'd like to have, you know, that we can help work with. And Gina, I tell you, I cannot remember. I'm talking lots, too. A lot of times I've done this. And I did it on the West Coast and the East Coast, and I did it in Texas and in the Midwest. You know, it didn't seem to matter. Some things happened every single time. First of all, no one ever completed the list. You know, they would sit there and they'd get 5 or 6 things, but then they would sort of choke up and not be able to finish the list. That's kind of an interesting thing. Now, I know how the listener might feel. Say, give me a piece of paper, I'll show you a list. But it doesn't seem to work that way when you're really on the spot. Okay. Another thing I began to notice after a while was that they all had the same list.
Really?
All had the same list.
Now that's interesting.
What kind of things were on the list? Home, car, clothes, travel, saving, you know what I mean, this kind of thing. And so I began to wonder, is this their list or is it society's list? Is what's been determined that you have to have in order to be appropriate? And so it didn't. And another thing I noticed that they wouldn't follow through on their list. You know, you're supposed to take a goal list and nurture it and prioritize it and upgrade it and update it.
Set those dates for accomplishment that we talked about last week.
And they wouldn't do that. No one was doing that. And I'm a slow learner. I mean, it took me quite a while to realize, what is this all about? And then the crowning thing was in 1971. I had a national company, hundreds of salespeople across the country, and we put up this promotion where when I went into their city, now I had a front person that went in and kind of said, Bern's coming, and he's going to ask you for this, and get ready. And he said, now one thing is have your goal list, because if you ask Bern to see his goal list and he doesn't have it with him, you know what I mean, you win $10,000. I had a contest, $10,000 if they could catch me without my goal list. And I never was asked. No one ever asked me, Bern, you have your goal list with you?
Not once.
Not one time.
Wow.
Now, part of the program, of course, was what? They had to have their goal list, and they had to have it updated, and they had to have it prioritized. Okay, and evidently, no one did that because they never asked me. Okay, and so I began to figure, what in the world is going on here? Because we know this: the few people who do this do better. We know this. I mean, there's no question. Why don't people do it? So, in the wondering of it all, it came to me, this developed in my mind, I'm going to start doing some research about this. And so I went out and I began to ask people, which of these lines, line A drawn this way, or line B drawn this way, or line C drawn this way, or line D, most closely represents your feelings when you think about setting a goal or having a goal. Okay, and I just waited. Now, I had people give all the answers. I knew that if they said D, they had a problem with goals. I knew that if they said B, they probably had a problem with goals.
Right.
Particularly, I'd say, why did you pick B? Was that a barrier or was that a pole you had to shimmy? I mean, and mostly people say, well, that's meant goals straight up. You know. However, after you round it off and what have you, approximately 97% of the people were picking C. Okay, and about 3% of the people were picking A. Because these were fairly infrequent overall. And you look at that and you say, that's interesting. Because it's been pretty well understood for some time now that in the richest land in the world, the United States, only 3% of our population becomes financially independent. You begin to wonder, is the reason they're picking C the reason they're not really succeeding? Particularly when I had occasion to ask Trammell Crow. I don't know if you ever heard of Trammell Crow, but one of the richest men in the country. Ross Perot had occasion to ask him. Other people like Jody Talal, multi-millionaire, asked these people where they chose, and they were all picking A. They were over here. And I said, well, why? Most of them say, well, it's just not an issue. It's just something that occurs. It's just, I mean, they wouldn't or couldn't define why they picked A.
But evidently, or very obviously, they're looking at goals from a different perspective.
Different perspective, you betcha. And I figure, well, what is this? Okay, now you're familiar with the Time Lifeline that I talk about occasionally. And so one day in working and thinking about this, I went, oh, okay, let's stick this on the Time Lifeline. So here's the Time Lifeline, and there's what people perceive as goals. And right away I began to see what was wrong. We're trichotomous. We have a subconscious mind that is a survivalist. He essentially wants to say everything to stay just the way it is. Any goal that we set is a conscious effort. Our conscious mind is what sees and hears and feels and smells and tastes and wants, therefore, okay? So the conscious mind says, hey, I want that. You know what I mean? Okay, and so it sets a goal. Say this entity is right here, not satisfied with the way things are, okay? And so they set a goal, which is positive. I mean, we have to know that. And that makes sense. It's called a goal gradient. That was negative moves to positive all the time. And so I figured, okay, then what? All right, now you go through this, you begin to understand the subconscious and say, wait a minute, right away there's a sense of what? Struggle. Now, as you ever walk up a hill, each step is harder than the one preceding it. Okay? And so there's a sense of struggle here.
And there's also a built-in assumption that you can only do it for so long.
Exactly.
Before you wear out.
Before you run out. With that sense of struggle, a little bit of this vertical line begins to diminish. If I had some white out, I could kind of daub it on here and diminish that line and put it in over here. There's a tendency to transfer that. Then there's a sense of slippage. There's this feeling that you get right in here somewhere and don't make it, what's going to happen? You're going to slide all the way back to the bottom. People aren't afraid of failure, Gina, nearly as much as they're afraid of being embarrassed. That's evident over the years. People don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to set out on something and family and friends and everyone know they didn't make it. It's just humiliating for them. And so, once again, some of this line diminishes and appears down here.
I think
you
they're
can see
also,
what's happening.
They're also afraid of loss. I think they're afraid that if they invest time or money or energy into something, they will lose. They'll end up with less than they have now.
And that's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
Because when you stop and think about it, well, if it's time and energy, what else you're going to be doing with it?
Well, you could be watching TV.
TV, yeah. You know, then there's a sense of separation.
Hopefully something like Life Talk.
Yeah, hopefully something like Lifetime. Then there's a sense of separation, which is really valid. There is a fear of success. There is a subtle fear of success because if you acquire this, you're separated from where you really want to be on the time lifeline. People who are industrious, ambitious, have goals, intentions, oftentimes are ostracized by their families and peers. Say, who do you think you are? What are you up to? Don't be silly. That's not for you. I mean, everybody's writing on our blackboard. And so, once again, some of this vertical line diminishes, transfers over here, and then there's the biggie down here. There's that last S is a word that means the same thing as, we've all heard it, pay the price. So what's the S word?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, yeah. And the subconscious mind goes, sacrifice? I got nothing now. You know what I mean? Sacrifice is not a good term. I got nothing now. And so now all we have up here is the negative sign, that that horizontal sign. And over here, this is positive all of a sudden.
To stay the same.
Yeah.
The status
settle
quo.
in. And I see people every day shaming the dream they had. And I've done it myself in the past until I realized what I was doing. They shame the dream. And they settle. And so goals kind of put me off a little bit. Now, not in sports. So, you know, if you got a goal line or a basketball hoop or something to attain, you got to understand that that's a goal. However, in sports, there's something that doesn't exist in real life. See, typically we make a lot of comparisons between sports and living and making a living. Not a good comparison. Because in sports, I don't think I've ever played one where there wasn't a bunch of guys on the other side of the field trying to keep me from doing it. And I've never had that in the socioeconomic life. I've never encountered anyone who said, Moses, you're not going to make it through me. Not once. So any resistance I might have had was what was occurring in my life right now. My status quo came from my own subconscious mind, fearful, anxious, ignorant, indolent, saying, hey, this is okay. And when you understand that relationship, a lot of these things, see, what we're saying is that the life formula, establishing a purpose, knowing what your parameters are, begins to level that line down here, where really what we're up to. See, when I finally figured out what these guys are up to over here, it's a subconscious awareness, okay, that you're here and where you want to be is down here, having grown from the, not a very good figure, but having grown from the process. See, personal growth. There's a fellow named Ed in town, Ed Gatchen, I can remember his name, and I think it's okay to mention it. Dynamic young real estate agent, very successful among his peers. I was in his home one day and I said, what do you attribute your success to? And he said, the quest for understanding of myself. He says, real estate's easy. That's consistent. You know what I mean? The laws are in place and the processes are there and we know what to do. He says, but if I found myself uncomfortable with certain people, not wanting to do certain things, reserved about initiating contact. I knew the problem was with me, not the industry. Okay, so he constantly worked on himself, looking for that personal growth, and everything else gets easy. You're prepared. That's what we mean by, in purpose, preparing, being willing to prepare. And that means looking in and say, hey, who am I really? How do I perceive things? How can I perceive them differently? And really open to objective, outside coaching. We can't do it by ourselves. You ever hear this expression, if it's going to be, it's up to
me?
Yeah.
It's up to me, but you can't do it by yourself if you don't have the knowledge, the information, the understanding, and the skill.
I just recently did a little poster. In fact, people can call in if they want to and get it. If it's going to be, it's up to me, and synergy. Synergy is a key. In other words, coordinate, collaborate with other people, look for an objective outside source of information, a coach, a mentor, so that they can say, this is what I suggest, because it's hardly possible for us to do it by ourselves, because we're subjective. We're subjectively involved and easy to get lost on the way. Now, with this, okay, with synergy and an understanding and with purpose, now you have serendipity. And so what we're saying now is that if it's going to be, it's up to me, synergy, and serendipity. And serendipity are those consequences that occur to people almost universally who are on purpose and committed to what they're doing. This is incredible. And a lot of people never enjoy this in their life, never really realize what that is. It's a myth. It's kind of a mysterious thing that happens to other people. Okay, but it need not if you're on purpose.
I think there's a real sense of that, a real sense of settling, because people don't even know where to go for outside coaching, how to get those answers.
I was talking to a man today, a delightful man. He runs a number of group homes for young people, and we were talking about how once you cut through that socioeconomic veneer that people present to the world that looks okay, that is just chaos. Confusion, aggravation, upset, wonder, doubt, you know what I mean? And this is what this show is about. Just keep hammering away, talking, reviewing these things. Because, you know, we've talked about some of these things in the past, and one thing we have to be careful of, oh, I've heard this show, I think I'll go on. You know what I mean? I've heard this before, I'll go on. That's the very thing we need to hear over and over again, because that's what helps us integrate it and ultimately to implement it. Otherwise, this is just an academic exercise we had. It was interesting, and oh yeah, let's see, what was that about? No, I know it was pretty good. It hasn't had an impact.
You're absolutely right. If you don't take the information and completely absorb it into your life, it's not of value to you.
In fact, it hides out in our subconscious mind, which is a survival mechanism, I'll repeat, and it'll bubble up, regurgitate itself, appear only to maintain the status quo. It's amazing. That's why I see people going to seminars and reading books and coming out of there saying, wow, this is it, this is the answer, yet I see no significant difference. And then they're telling me how great this tape is. I got to hear the tape. I got to read the book, you know, and yet I don't see any difference. And it's only those people who savor, you know, who swish that material around in the recesses of their mind, and they practice it and apply it, and all of a sudden there's that thing called breakthrough. And that's an exciting moment. People say, oh, I see how this works. And it's there. And one of the things that I think more people have difficulty with is doing what they're doing at the moment. And those predetermining what they're going to do, and at the same time knowing that it's on purpose. I mean, that it's moving toward the fulfillment of their goal, and then focusing on that. Because if when we're doing this, we want to do this, and we're over here, we want to be here, oh, boy, that's stressful.
Extremely.
I was reading about Woody Allen. He says he knows of himself that when he's in Paris, he wants to be in New York. And when he's in New York, he wants to be in Paris. He said, I am never where I want to be. Never. And that's something we need to work on. Now, we can't deny Woody Allen's success, but we also have to acknowledge his trauma.
Right.
Very unhappy man with a lot of difficulties. It's because of that. It doesn't mean you can't be accomplished, but you'll never be successful.
Well, I think a great deal of his success comes from the fact that people empathize with his struggle and his trauma.
Yep.
And he's written about that in a witty way and made it public so people can share in that same very sad difficult place to be.
We have a series of things going on. I know last week we asked people to take a crack at writing a statement of purpose and sending it to us. Now, where do they send it? They can email it, or, yeah, let's see, I got an email site. What is that? Oh, it's Burn Moses at Sacramento City. Sacramento City. That's it. Because they have the www up front, I think. But Burn Moses at Sacramento City is a email address at Sacramento City.
Okay.
Yeah, and they can do that, or they can write to 1731 Howe Avenue, H-O-W-E, Avenue, number 321, Suite 321 in Sacramento. Good spot as any. Sacramento, 95826, I believe. And they can send their statements of purpose in, their mission statement. We can kind of, look at them, examine them, and we'll keep it confidential if they like, or broadcast it openly. And when we get a good one, we'll have them on the show. Say, come on and talk to us. Because I know we've had guests here that really made a contribution.
That's right.
Yep, you betcha.
So this is your chance, folks, to get on TV.
That's right. I've had several people lately I've invited on and say, oh no, I couldn't do that, which leads me to something. If you ever get a chance to do something like this, do it. If you get offered a promotion, take it. Because oftentimes we don't understand what we have to contribute. Other people see in us all kinds of gifts and possibilities that I think sometimes we overlook in ourselves. I know there's been some delightful people recently I've asked on, and they just got real nervous. And I said, hey, what do you think we feel? You know what I mean? I've never come here totally prepared. How could you possibly?
Well, it's not only what you contribute, but also what you get out of it. I was on the East Coast last month for my first time with a couple of friends and business associates, and after the show one night, after our business show, we decided to go to New York and see the town. And one of the fellows, we had to drag him along. He didn't want to go. I mean, he goes to New Jersey every year for this same business trade show, and he never has been to New York in the last 7 years. And so we dragged him into New York, and the whole time he complained about how he didn't want to be there and how bad the train was and how bad the subway was. And we get back to California, and everybody hears from this fellow, I went to New York. It was so wonderful. Yep. The food was great. This was wonderful. That was wonderful. And so it was a little bit of that, I think, his subconscious mind telling him it's going to be awful, you're going to get mugged, blah, blah, blah. And then he makes it back, and it's made a difference in his life.
Yep. That's wonderful.
So we've got to take those opportunities.
It's an experience.
Because you may not ever have it again.
Yeah.
This may be it for you.
You know the tragedy? There are people in New York who have never seen New York.
Yeah.
Because that's where they are, and they don't want to be there, but they settled in. It's amazing how many people, and I know people here in California that have never been, to
San Francisco.
Yeah, never been to San Francisco.
And there's lots of us in Sacramento who've never even toured the state capitol.
I have. I'm making believe they're friends. Yeah, I've been there. And it's more fascinating than I would have thought. I will admit, I look at things to do, and I think, whoa, big time.
Right.
And yet, if you go do those things, they're a delight. It's really kind of fascinating. Gina, where are we heading with this? The mission statement.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Before
I'll bring
we go on,
next week.
That'd be great. Before we go on to mission statement, as you interviewed the people, the 3%, the millionaires, the multimillionaires, the people who've really had success in their lives where they wanted to, what significantly was different in the way they thought? I mean, obviously, they didn't see goal setting as a challenge, as a struggle, as a sacrifice.
Every one of them, it was apparent, wanted to make a contribution.
But there must have been
on a larger and larger scale.
Right.
They chose different ways of doing it. Talal was a financial planner. Didn't sell product, just did financial plans. Trammell Crow was a construction man and created a lot of millionaires. Ross Perot, of course, went into the computer industry. That's how he made his contribution. However we perceive that, that's what the intention was. To do more for less, support people. And all of those people were so contributive outside of their arena. See, a lot of people, I've had actual people say that it's obscene to make a lot of money. You know what I mean? But when these people do, what they do, they channel it over into other arenas. I mean, foster homes and educational programs and scholarships and on and on and on. Just like Sinatra, as bad as that guy was, you know, I mean, some people just hated him. I understand when he died the other day, somewhere between $70 and $120 million left for to be spent on researching on how to correct the situation with abused children. You know, that's a major contribution. You know, and every one of these people seemed to have that knack about them. I'd have never met a wealthy person who was greedy, you know, who just did it for themselves. Never have. Most of them live a good lifestyle, but you have to understand in proportion,
relative
it's
to
less
what
than what we spend.
Right.
Yeah, it's less than what we spend.
Well, so contribution obviously is very important, but also they're not thinking about this process as an uphill struggle. They're thinking of it as a forward momentum, a forward movement, a level playing field. I get up today, and these are the things I'm going to do, not as a struggle and a sacrifice.
All risk takers. All risk takers. They'll do things they don't know the outcome in. All of them will do things that they don't know the outcome.
The fear must be somewhat diminished or gone. There must be some joy and some anticipation in the work or the activities that they're going to be engaging in. There's got to be eagerness to get to the going-ons of the day.
Any challenge does that for you. I was asking someone the other day, how many times do you go to your job and people applaud you when you walk in? You know what I mean? And I've been in an environment where that happens all the time. You know what I mean? In other words, that people are celebrating one another, their personal growth. See, a lot of these environments that are established, it's okay to grow and to excel, because a lot of environments it's not. Because I have one son whose life was threatened twice because he was excellent in what he was doing and contributive. And he was threatened by his peers. And we're going to be if we don't get off the air. This is Life Talk. It's about life, living, and making a living, sometimes loving. That's our favorite subject. And we're at 916-366-8749. Call us, and we'll send you all kinds of good goodies. Thank you, Gina.
That's great. Thank you, Bern.